Imagine that you are in a dangerous situation, so you call the police, but they aren't able to help in time. Her entire world was shattered because of the city's decision to defund the police.
You see my son reach for help.
You blame the city and then the mayor for doing the defunding.
Absolutely.
Police officers go to work every day wondering, am I going to get indicted for simply doing my job?
All right, I want you to imagine that you are in a dangerous situation, so you call the police, but they aren't able to help in time. It's a scenario playing out all over America with dire consequences. In a nation plagued by crime and chaos, law enforcement shortages have left small and large communities vulnerable. With understaffing and difficult recruiting, hundreds of positions are empty in big cities, and some of the smaller departments are actually closing down completely. The proud men and women in blue say they're stretched thin. Tonight, we'll discuss the root cause of this crisis and explore how to save our safety and security from just crumbling completely. My first guest, Julia, says her entire world was shattered because of the city's decision to defund the police.
Doug was my second son. He was very happy, loving. Doug went to Austin to celebrate his completion of his education with childhood friends that he had forever. They were on 6th Street. They were sort of bar hopping. All of a sudden, there were shots. Doug was hit immediately. There were 2 police officers working on him because it was serious. They took him to the hospital. The police did all they could to help, but it was a disaster. People laying all over the street, screaming for help. There weren't enough police officers. There weren't enough ambulances. Defunding the police played a big factor in why my son is dead. The people to blame are the city council members and the mayor. They defunded the gang unit. The shooter was a teenager from a gang. Losing my son to this type of violence it's just still too hard to believe.
Well, Julia, that's hard to imagine. And it's still hard when you see this and have to think about it, right?
I did everything to hold myself back from crying.
Yeah. I guess the hardest thing about it is your feeling is it didn't have to happen, and then it didn't have to end the way it did.
Absolutely. When the gang member started shooting, he didn't have help right away. He got hit from the side and it went across his whole stomach and blew out everything. The ambulance, it was there. There weren't really enough police there at all, but the police did everything they could to save him. In court, they showed the video of his friend Michael grabbing him and running with him to the end of the block. And you see the police officer there, and you see my son reaching for help. And they had to put him in their own car because there was no help. And they took him in their police car and rushed him to the hospital. If it wasn't for defending, there would have been more police officers there. And there would have been people who knew certain divisions who would have known who was coming in and out of there.
So this starts way back before that night because there was a movement to defund the police in Austin. And so you're saying there weren't enough officers down on 6th Street to be monitoring, watching, spotting activity that they could have stopped if it was going on.
Yes.
They didn't have EMTs there to render aid that they could. So this rollbacks of budget, eliminating positions, all that just has a snowball effect.
Absolutely. And when you catch somebody and you let them out 5 minutes later, what does that tell them? And now you're telling them we're defunding the police. So here you go. Here's your green light. Go do whatever you want to do. Kill, rape, do whatever. No one's going to do anything about it.
You're saying it sends a signal
Absolutely.
that we're not a city of laws. You blame the city and then the mayor for doing the defunding. And what did the defunding look like there? What did Austin do?
I don't know how much exactly they lost, but it was in the millions. The city is a disaster. It's disgusting. They just don't have enough help to handle the crimes that's going on there.
Well, in 2020, Austin City Council voted to cut $21.5 million from the police budget and to transfer an additional $128 million from the police to other city departments. So we're talking about a lot of money. But then, after the fact, their budget was record high because they recognized, oh, okay, obviously this doesn't work. Obviously this is a problem, but that doesn't help you.
It's too late.
Yeah.
You know, it just shows you that they don't care about you. They beg for the job. They promise you anything. You put them in office and you're disposable. You're replaceable.
Yeah.
They don't need you. They couldn't care less. They only did what they had to do to make it look good.
Minneapolis cut $7.8 million, but then they later put $6.4 million of it back. LA City Council approved $11.8 billion, and then $87 million was increased back to the LAPD. So I'm telling you, it's a lot of virtue signaling. They just say, okay, right now, everybody's anti-police, so we're gonna stand up and really make a big change here. But it doesn't work because they realize we've got to have law and order. In the meantime, people like yourself wind up with a huge loss.
Isn't it sad? These are the people running our city and state.
Yeah. Coming up, a woman who says the county is really to blame for the death of Julia's son. We'll explain why.
The American law enforcement officer has been demonized and vilified. And because of that, we have an increase in police officer resignations and retirements. You know, and this pattern that we're seeing of police officers leaving their agencies is going to continue until we go back to respecting the American law enforcement officer and appreciating exactly what they do for their communities.
Well, that was retired Sergeant Betsy Smith. She is the spokesperson for the National Police Association and says law enforcement shortages have been a crisis years in the making. It's good to see you again. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Phil, for having me back.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. I bet we talk about it again because this is something that needs to be managed. It's not going to be cured. But what's going on with this? To me, this is a problem of perception, not reality.
You're absolutely right. This is truly a false narrative that somehow the American law enforcement officer is the problem. This really goes back to 2014, the justifiable police shooting of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. And then you go forward to the death of George Floyd in 2020, and so many people, media, politicians, school teachers, and on, even entertainers, said that somehow it's the American law enforcement officer who is the problem. We're the ones who are committing violence. And so after 2020, a lot of American law enforcement officers said, you know what, we're out. We can't do this anymore because nobody's gonna get rich from being a cop. You don't do it for the money. You do it because you have a sense of mission and you wanna help your community. You want to help victims like your son. And we need to get back to understanding what cops do, and we need to understand the true facts about police use of force and what the realities are of the day-to-day life of the American law enforcement officer and what we do for our communities.
Yeah. Struggling with foot, knee, or back pain? G-Defy shoes can change your life. G-Defy shoes are FTC approved to relieve pain caused by weight-bearing activities like walking, running, or prolonged standing. G-Defy absorbs harmful shock and returns energy to each step. This means better body alignment and improved biomechanics. Translation? Freedom to do what you love pain-free. G-Defy shoes have your back. Literally. They're a game changer for seniors and veterans who deserve comfort and support. Here's the deal. You can try G-Defy risk-free with a 60-day trial. And right now, listeners of this podcast get an exclusive offer, 50% off orders of $120 or more. Just text Dr. Phil to 91888. That's right. Half off shoes designed to improve your quality of life. So take control of your life. Text Dr. Phil to 91888 or visit gdefy.com today. It's time to feel good again because you deserve it. Are you ready to jumpstart your health in 2025? Lumen can help. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It measures your metabolism through your breath and via the app tells you whether you're burning fat or carbs. It then provides tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workouts, sleep, and stress management. Start your day by breathing into Lumen to check your metabolism. Based on your results, it gives you a personalized nutrition plan for the day. You can also use it before and after meals or workouts to understand how your body responds in real time. Your metabolism is your body's engine. Optimizing it can lead to better energy, easier weight management, improved fitness, and more. Take the next step towards better health. Visit lumen.me/Dr. Phil for 20% off your Lumen. I spend a lot of time with police departments, as you know. I've spent time with NYPD, hours on patrol with them after an officer was shot and killed on a routine traffic stop. And they really hurt when this happens, just like you hurt when your son is killed. And you say that big cities have hundreds of jobs unfilled among the police ranks because they can't recruit. Nobody wants those jobs.
Well, you're absolutely right. Why would you? And I mean, think about this. If you're a young person and you have been told in school and in college and by the media and by singers that the police are bad, why would you go toward that profession? And so we have this terrible shortage. So what we're having to do, departments are having to lower their standards. They're trying to do big hiring bonuses. There's so many different things. And yet, you know, what has the defund the police movement called for? Oh, cops need to be better trained. They need to be better educated, all of that. And yet we are fostering just the opposite. Cops go out and make good arrests every day. They do great investigative work. And if nobody will prosecute those cases, why would you keep doing your job?
Yeah, exactly. And you know, that creates a morale problem. And when they started all of this defund stuff, we saw resignations at a highest level, right?
And retirements. 47% increase in police retirements. As soon as cops could retire, they decided to get out. And then a lot of cops just left and went to other professions.
Because the fact is, if they got a target on them, they feel like, okay, I'm seeing a crime happen over here. I can intervene, maybe even have to pull my gun, and that can be criminalized. I could wind up getting prosecuted and face charges for manslaughter, murder, for putting myself in the gap to protect society. That's a morale problem. That's a motivation problem.
Well, it absolutely is. When I was a young cop, you know, we worried about getting, you know, am I going to get sued or am I going to do something outside of policy? Now, police officers like these go to work every day wondering, am I going to get indicted for simply doing my job? And that's one of the biggest problems departments around the country is there's prosecutors more interested in putting cops in jail than they are bad guys.
That's exactly what I heard.
And that's too bad because I've talked to people in the communities like Ferguson, Missouri, and they're the first ones to say, we don't want less cops. We want our businesses protected. We want our homes protected. We want our neighborhoods protected. We don't want this rollback. These are activists that are out front virtue signaling saying, we're going to jump on this bandwagon and demonize the police when They're needed out there. They were needed when your son was shot by gangs. Somebody needed to be there controlling, neutralizing those gangs. And there weren't enough cops there to do it. Look, police make mistakes. There's no question. They make mistakes in screening. There are some people that are given a badge and gun that should never be given a badge and gun. And there are constant efforts made to improve the screening process, and there's no doubt about that. But there are somewhere between, I don't know what, depending on how you define it, 900 and 1 million men and women in uniform in this country today. The vast majority, 99.9% of those people are good people that get up every morning and put their lives in danger. And I've said before, I never pass a law enforcement officer on the street when I'm walking in a city that I don't stop and go over and shake their hand and say, thank you for what you do. And we all need to do that. All right, coming up, a woman who sued the city of Seattle and won after negligence cost her father his life. We'll hear from her next.
On November 2nd, 2021, that morning my father hadn't been feeling too well, and my 13-year-old brother was just taking care of him until my dad started not being able to breathe. My brother called 911.
Is he awake? Is he conscious?
I don't know. I think, yeah, he's conscious, but he's not okay. I think he's having a heart attack or something. Hurry.
Well, that was my next guest, Brooklyn's younger brother. Their story made national headlines after he called 911, but when time was of the essence, the unthinkable happened.
EMTs showed up, but they didn't end up being able to go in because my dad was mistakenly on a blacklist. It means it's a dangerous location, and the EMTs can't go in without a police escort. He could see EMTs sitting outside the apartment.
There's already people coming over, but he's barely breathing, and he wasn't like this before.
Okay.
He's really worried.
Okay, I do have people on the way.
Once my brother made the second phone call, they eventually decided to go in themselves without the police escort. It took about 13 minutes total before they entered the home because the police hadn't arrived. It had been too long after the heart attack happened for them to be able to save him. The medical examiners said that there was a 60 to 70% chance of survival if the paramedics could have entered the home when they had first arrived. I definitely blame the city of Seattle for my dad's death and their part in not funding enough police. I think the slow response time was due to them being understaffed. What I felt afterwards was a distrust for law enforcement and a feeling of being afraid that if something bad were to happen, there wouldn't be someone to show up.
Brooklyn, thank you for being here. This was a terrible situation. A life was lost through miscommunication, outdated information, and clearly due to staffing and things just not getting updated, right?
Correct.
And experts testified, medical examiners, that had they been there in a timely fashion, there's a really good chance he could have survived.
Correct, yeah.
As you look back on that, how do you feel about it?
It's very scary, and it's upsetting to know that it could happen to almost anybody, and you would have no way of knowing until it's too late.
You know, Betsy, I've been in the situation rooms of major police departments, and it looks like the Department of Defense in a lot of these cities. They're very sophisticated, and that means they can measure and predict response times. So when they decide they're going to cut back budgets, they're going to eliminate 200 officers, there's an algorithm. They can say, when we do that, response time is going to go up double, 40%, 60%. They can predict that. So when they make these decisions, when they go in those city council rooms and they sit down and say, okay, we're going to cut back budgets, we're going to defund the police and route this somewhere else, they do that full well knowing our response time to our citizens is getting ready to go up. They know that when they make that decision, correct?
They absolutely know that, but they don't care because so many of them, and remember, these are politicians a lot of times making these decisions, that again, they believe that false narrative that it's law enforcement that's dangerous. Seattle is the perfect example, you know, the summer of love in 2020, Chop Chaz and all that, literally forcing the police department to give up one of their district stations because the police were going to be bad. What happened? Young people were murdered. Women were raped. They know what they're doing. They just don't care.
You're saying that they are advised of this, right? When they have these meetings, the police chief, the consultants go in and say, look, when you cut this and someone calls 911, if the normal response time is 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes within X radius, that's going to go to 7 minutes. That's going to go to 12 minutes. Non-emergency time is going to stack up to maybe 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour. And they're saying, we're going to do that anyway because we think we need to get these officers off the street because they're thugs? What?
Yeah, and it sounds insane when you say it out loud, but that's exactly what so many of these politicians believe, that again, that we're the problem. Just in the last couple of days, the Los Angeles Unified School District decided they're going to bring police officers back into the schools. If you go back to 2020, they kicked all the police officers out of the school because police were dangerous to children. Now, people are realizing that this is a problem.
All right, well, I'm going to ask you some questions in a minute about that after the break. A former officer made a very public resignation from the police force that he loved, and you're going to find out why when we come back. $36 trillion. That is the U.S. debt, and it gets deeper and deeper by the day. Our debt has never been higher, nor have the stakes. The government is looking to slash the federal budget by $2 trillion, and no one knows what that will mean for your job, savings, and future. I've seen a lot in my time, and there's one thing I know for sure. You need to prepare before it's too late. I trust Preserve Gold to help protect my wealth, and I strongly urge you to do the same. They are the only precious metals firm I trust and recommend to my family, friends, and audience, and they have a special offer just for you. Text Dr. Phil to 50505 to get your free precious metals guide from Preserve Gold. With gold prices recently breaking records and analysts predicting this trend to continue throughout 2025, you cannot afford to wait. As a bonus, you can get up to $15,000 with a qualified purchase from Preserve Gold. So don't wait. Text Dr. Phil to 50505 today.
They've got to be able to support their families. You know, we have officers that can't even qualify for apartments because their income doesn't match up with what the apartments require.
For decorated officers like newly retired Atlanta police officer Tyrone Dennis, his pay didn't keep up with his career.
It would be foolish for me to stay for $48,000 when I have a wife and 3 kids to feed. For $48,000, I can almost, and a family with 3 kids, I can almost qualify for public assistance.
Well, one former police chief took a stand against the tides of change. But when his fight for justice fell on deaf ears, he made a decision that impacted the entire community.
In 2019, I was appointed the police chief in Blue Mound. There were lots of people dealing drugs, car theft, house burglaries, and we were able to make it a much safer neighborhood. In 2022, the city council and the mayor informed me that $200,000 would be cut from the budget, and they were considering outsourcing dispatch. I knew that if we were going to outsource dispatch, it was going to be dangerous for my officers to be out there. In September of 2022, the mayor called a special meeting about cutting dispatch. So I had posted on the PD Facebook page for people to show up and support us. When I posted that, I had received an email from the mayor. She was very upset, and she told me to take it down immediately. At the special meeting, all the officers had a chance to speak in support of dispatch, and I spoke at the end, and I knew I was fighting a losing battle, so I took my badge off and put it on the mayor's desk and just turned around and walked out. It was very tough. I felt like there was a huge lack of respect towards me. from the mayor, and we had done so much for this community. After I resigned, the budget for the police department was still cut by 20%. The city now currently has a higher crime rate. The citizens are concerned because there's no officers patrolling the streets. What I see now is the police department's short-staffed, and it's hard for them as officers to go out and do their job.
Well, Dusty, thanks for being here. When you took your stand, they were going to take dispatch away, and that would create what problem?
A lack of communication between the officers and the dispatch. Could be an officer safety issue. They were also considering cutting 2 police officer positions, which would have meant we would have went from having 2 to 3 officers working at one time to only 1 officer, which is what they have now, is 1 officer.
And they ultimately did that?
Yes.
So you got officers out there by themselves, no backup, no nothing if something...
And you can call for a neighboring agency, but they may not be available, or it may take them a while to get there for assistance. But they're working alone.
Yeah. Is that safe?
Absolutely not.
Who made the decision, and with what expertise? Was this a political decision?
So the mayor hired a part-time budget consultant, and that budget consultant came in and said there's a budget crisis and we have to cut from the police department, dispatch. They considered outsourcing the fire department as well. They haven't done that, but they considered it. So that budget consultant ultimately advised the mayor to cut these positions.
That budget consultant ever been on a domestic violence call?
No police experience whatsoever.
You've looked to find work with police departments elsewhere?
Yeah, I've applied at multiple agencies since leaving about 1.5 years ago, but I just recently found out that the mayor filled my personnel file full of negative documentation. So, yeah. So I've been rejected by all of them.
And you think it's because you defied her?
Absolutely, yeah.
What did she put in the file, do you know?
I finally got the open records request. I got it just a month ago. But just negative emails or us talking about this back and forth and just things that doesn't make me look good. Unnecessary things that didn't need to be in there, but put it all together and it doesn't look good.
But you still want to serve?
Absolutely.
Well, we're going to talk about that some more. Coming up, a sheriff who says small towns are really in trouble when it comes to police protection. We're going to find out why.
More shootings and more 911 calls have police departments around the country struggling to meet the growing need, with departments stretched thin. The worker shortage is already disrupting public safety around the country by causing delays in law enforcement response times and a reduction in detectives working cases. In Portland, Oregon, they are short 108 officers. In Dallas, they are short 550 officers. And in Kansas City, Missouri, they are short some 224 officers.
Every police department is looking for the same group of talented, motivated individuals that have a heart to serve.
Well, Bill Wayburn is sheriff of one of the largest counties in the nation and says he is often contacted when small-town police departments are stretched thin and their budgets have just run dry. You do what you can, right? It's difficult.
It can be very difficult with our situation where we have long response times to inner cities or to cities that suddenly are found that they only have 1 officer on duty where we go. That response time can be very long from a county perspective.
You're sheriff at Tarrant County, and you've got 1,700 personnel, 190 in detention officers, 5 jails. I mean, you got a lot going on.
We got a little bit going on.
Why is this happening, in your opinion?
I think that the American people, one of the things that they don't understand is that the American police themselves better than any profession in the nation, including the clergy and certainly attorneys. And they forget that when we have bad apples, when bad things happen, is it's their fellow peers that are filing those criminal charges on them. And no other profession you're going to find that. So they take off with rumors and propaganda that's certainly not true, or that first that first story that comes out of a shooting or that first story that comes out of a death situation, and they run with it, and they have no idea, the media has no idea what they're saying is causing the havoc that it is. But certainly some of those solutions also was in pay, and in Texas, the pay has skyrocketed to medium-sized and large cities, which makes it very difficult for small towns to keep up.
Yeah, they're just not competitive.
Yeah.
And what some people don't understand is that nationwide, the number of officers assaulted, shot, or killed in the line of duty just doesn't get much press. Because in 2021, there were 346 officers shot, 64 died. 126 during disturbance calls or traffic stops, 107 were just outright ambushed,
right,
and 32 died. And Texas ranks #1.
Yes.
There were 43 shootings of officers in Texas. In 22, 331 officers were shot, 62 died, 126 ambushes.
Yes.
Just where they just straight up ambushed an officer, and 32 died. In 2023, 378 officers were shot, 46 died, 115 in ambushes. So this is a dangerous job.
Very dangerous.
That you guys are out there doing.
Absolutely.
Having spent over 45 years in psychology, I've worked with law enforcement in crisis situations before. I think law enforcement officers should have one job, and that is to get control of dangerous situations. I don't think officers should come in and try to be social workers, therapists, or whatever. I think that is a damn good way to get yourself and citizens shot. In my opinion, your job is to suppress dangerous behavior and get that under control as quickly and safely as possible. Am I wrong about that?
You're absolutely right, is that we need to train people to stand between evil and good, and then let somebody else sort out the evil after we've got control over it. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that. What are the solutions to making our police departments a priority for our communities? We'll talk about that next.
Less people want to become cops and more cops wanting to leave the job earlier. It's a trying time to be a police officer in this country, and that's the challenge.
This profession is something we were all called to do. And not everyone is meant to be the police, and that's fine. But this profession is certainly a noble one.
I've never seen the morale so low. I've never seen the rank so low. I've never seen the level of violence that we're seeing now.
Basically, we're one bullet away from death and one mistake away from indictment.
I listen to both sides of all arguments. The police departments are not perfect. I don't know of any profession that is perfect. I don't do a perfect job up here. Police don't do a perfect job out there. But as the sheriff says, it's one of the few that really polices themselves. And I've said for a long time, I'm very strong in support of law enforcement. I've said we've got issues in this country. That's the title of my book, We've Got Issues. And I think one is that the vast majority, the middle of this country, sometimes is not vocal enough and let the fringes hijack the narrative. And I think the narrative has been hijacked about law enforcement in this country, and the 80% of us in the middle need to stand up and say, no, that's not right. We support our police department. And I certainly do, and I've made no bones about that. Might as well just... might as well just come out. Joining us from the audience is Corporal Dixon. Her recruiting agency is doing a lot to engage the community and youth. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
There's a lot to be said for creating that relationship, engaging with the people, particularly the young people, and overcoming some of this narrative that's been hijacked. Is that working?
I think it's working. We have a really good community backing in Fort Worth. We do a lot with our community, and we do some stuff with Tarrant County as well. We have a lot of programs for the youth. We have a lot of mentorship programs, a lot of programs where they can come and work with us, the cadet program, the Explorer program. Operation Progress is a really good mentorship program. We have a PAL, which is a police athletic league, where we sponsor children who are unable to afford to play sports. So we are trying to be very active with our youth because they are the next generation of police officers, teachers, nurses, whatever.
Right. And, you know, we have a series within the series here at Dr. Phil for years and years, and we're continuing with Dr. Phil Primetime called Behind the Badge. And we want to personalize and humanize these officers because it's easy to demonize officers if you don't really know who they are and realize these are moms and dads and sons and daughters. They're caring people just like everybody else. And also joining us from the audience is former Chief of Police, Dr. Theron, who has over 3 decades of law enforcement experience and says it's time to modernize staffing police functions. So thank you for being here as well, Doctor. What do you think is important to focus on?
When I look at police departments around the country, often I'm embarrassed when I look at the technology that they have, when I see the investments in quality staffing and quality equipment. I think it's time, as we look to change the narrative in policing, that we start to invest in the police like our lives depend upon them.
Amen.
Well, and I have a question for all of y'all that's, I think is really critical when we come back. We're back and we're talking about law enforcement in the United States. Listen, I'm a big proponent of the First Amendment. I think people have the right to say what they want to say. They have the right to be wrong. They have the right to be loud. They have the right to do whatever they want to do. But we also have the right to choose what we want to listen to and what we don't want to listen to, and we have the right to speak up as well. And we've got a lot of people out there that are bad-mouthing law enforcement like they're a bunch of jackbooted thugs running around being badge heavy. And listen, you can find bad examples in every profession, and you can focus on that and blow it up. And I'm not saying that there aren't mistakes that have been made in law enforcement. No profession operates at a level of perfection. What we strive for is excellence, not perfection. And what's happening now, because there's this zeitgeist of negativity about law enforcement, jobs are hard to fill, so standards are being lowered. How do you guys feel about lowering the standards?
It's such a terrible idea, right, Sheriff? To lower the standards for a profession that people are saying cops need to be better educated and better trained. Remember, we have to go out there and potentially utilize deadly force. Do you want somebody doing that who really isn't properly prepared, doesn't have the proper background, isn't properly trained? But when we talk about defunding, Dr. Phil, that one of the first things to go is training.
What do you think about lowering the standards?
Absolutely against it. We've been blessed in Tarrant County that we have not lowered standards even though that we're short of staff, we haven't lowered, we've refused to do that. And I think what Dr. Baumann was leading to, not to put words in his mouth, but as we improve that staff, we need to think about raising standards so that we don't have bad cops.
I've actually written about raising standards. I think we elevate, we educate to elevate, we raise standards. Our inclination when times get tough is to make cuts. I think for policing, when times get tough, that's a signal that we need to invest. We need to raise standards. We need to make sure that we get the best quality in law enforcement and that we're able to attract the best and the brightest into the profession. We do that with higher standards.
Absolutely.
Do you agree?
When I took over in 2019, we were short-staffed, and I had to hire some people that had red flags. And those were people I shouldn't have hired. We had issues with them, and it was a problem. So I ended up having to get rid of them.
And there are some departments in the country that are hiring illegal immigrants, that are hiring people with some criminal backgrounds as police.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, but I don't think I want to give somebody a badge and a gun that was on the other side of the badge and the gun year before last.
That's a good
Absolutely.
We need to encourage people to change their attitudes about this. And I said, I don't pass officers without speaking to them and thanking them for doing their job. And I think we should all do that. We need to let them know that that narrative that's getting the most play on the internet and social media and all is not speaking for all of us, because I don't think it's speaking for all of us. I think they're the loudest, but I don't think they're the most frequent. And I also think we need to help find this gentleman a job.
Amen.
I was with the LA Sheriff's Department for several hours when they were preparing to take back the UCLA campus, and I spent several hours with them in the middle of the night when they were getting ready to do that. And I'm telling you, we're talking about dedicated men and women that were getting ready to go in and put themselves in harm's way, and a lot of military veterans there. And as I was talking to them, they're getting ready to go into all these pro-Palestinians behind these board walls, and they don't know what kind of weapons they have. And as I was talking to the heads of those units at 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever time it was, I said, what's uppermost in your mind is you're getting ready to go in here. And they all said, we want to get everybody we can home safe. Mm-hmm. The demonstrators, the protesters, the students, all of our officers, everybody, they're saying our number one priority, we just want to get everybody home safe. They weren't like, yeah, we're ready to go kick some ass. No, they were like, we want everybody to get home safe. That was their priority.
Remember, cops don't initiate force. We just respond to it.
Yeah. I was talking to one of them who had been leaning against the car for a long time. I said, you get nervous waiting? He said, nah, I'm good. I said, yeah, okay. I got you. We've got to stop for now, but I appreciate everybody being here and talking about this, and I hope everybody will really take to heart what we're talking about. I want to thank all of my guests for being here tonight, and a special thanks to Sergeant Betsy Smith, National Spokesperson for the National Police Association, and Sheriff Bill Wayburn. Thank you again for being here and talking about this. We're so glad you joined us tonight on Merit TV. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much.